Hi, my name is David Toya, and today we're going to be talking about the fact that just because something is simple doesn't mean it is necessarily easy to do. I once had a friend that had some relationship issues, and no matter how many times I told my friend that he needed to do some things in order to make his relationship work, he honestly always told me that it wasn't that simple. And he's not alone in this. Many of us, including students, business owners, we try to do things in our academics, in our businesses, and they don't work out. And instead of just accepting that we are doing something wrong, we think of an excuse. And the excuse is not necessarily something that seems like an excuse. We create a solution that's actually an excuse. The solution is we just need to read more books. We just need to gather more information. And that's not the case at all. What do I mean by this? What I mean is that people start looking for hacks, for tricks, for secrets, for hidden things that would solve their problems. And the thing about extraordinary people is that they don't necessarily do anything that you don't already know about. They just do it consistently. Now, what do I mean? What I mean is that the only thing that makes an extraordinary person different from yourself is not the number of books they've read, although that helps, and you should actually be reading more books. It's actually a definite decision to do something usually ordinary. The vast majority of us know that we should actually read a book every once in a while, but not many of us do that regularly. The vast majority of us know that we should actually have an exercise routine to stay in shape, but not many of us do that. We look at the people that have amazing bodies, that have awesome charisma, and we keep wondering, why is this person so gifted? That might not be what every one of us thinks exactly, but we might also think it in different ways. We might think, if only I had had the experience that this person had had, if only I had lived the kind of life that this person had lived. But the truth is that you didn't. You did not live the kind of life that that person lived. And there is no way you can remedy that. However, you can make a definite decision to do the simple things that can get you from one point to another. Let's get back to our initial topic, which is simple things can be hard to do. For example, the vast majority of us know that if we do anything for a really long time, say 5 years, we would become experts at it. We understand that we will see some reasonable level of progress. However, not many of us can decide to do that. Students often try to study, they realize that they are having some difficulty understanding. And instead of just walking through that difficulty, I have seen many students say, I have a learning difficulty. I am simply not gifted. I wish I could sit down like this other person and just read. However, you can. It's the same thing with business owners. I have seen business owners maintain a mediocre product while knowing that if they improve upon their product every single month while responding to what their customers say, because we all know that if we only listen to people, we would know what they wanted from us. But just because these things are simple doesn't mean that they are easy to do. So, how do you do what is simple and how do you do it regularly? First of all, I'm going to tell you that it's hard, it takes work, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. Any life worth living is a life that requires some level of sacrifice. And the discipline to do what is hard is what makes for a great life. So, what do we do in order to make our lives efficient? I've thought about it for a while and I realized that the basic thing we have to do is fix our identity problem. That's number one, but it's the most fundamental thing. Because if you cannot fix the identity problem, then most things can't get done. Remember the examples I gave earlier. Students actually think that they have a learning difficulty. That's an identity problem. And if you've ever tried to do anything before and realized that you were really afraid of failing or you thought that you were going to fail, most of the time, not all the time, people end up failing. And even if you don't fail initially, most of the time, these kinds of people find a way to bottle things up. And this reminds me of a quote that says, it says that if you've seen a man that thinks of himself as a failure type person, this person would eventually find a way to fail, regardless of the fact that the opportunity was dumped right upon his lap. And I'm going to put it up here for you to see. You can pause the video if you want to read the whole thing. It's a little bit long. I have met many students who study only to fail because they already ascribe failure to themselves. They already ascribe themselves to be people that have understanding deficits, people that are not gifted, people that are not even worth trying to get a passing grade 4. And if they already conceive of themselves like that, and this can be extrapolated to marriages, to businesses, to friendships, to even family, whoever conceives himself a failure fails eventually. It's a simple fact. The identity creates a proportion of the ability. All right, so how do you fix an identity problem? It's mostly what you say to yourself. Remember the students from earlier, remember the business person from earlier. They were saying things about themselves. You have to be very watchful about what you say of yourself. For example, if you are trying to study as a student or if you're trying to run a business and things are not working out, you don't say that you might have a learning difficulty. You don't say something like, oh, I've noticed that I just find it hard to understand. You are giving yourself an identity, right? You don't say something like, I have poor customer relations, right? You don't just say that. You don't make that problem your identity. The only thing you have to do with problems is to solve them and not to identify with them. And that's a very vital mistake we make. So you have to be very thoughtful. You have to be very mindful about your words. So if you are experiencing some difficulty with anything, you are simply experiencing some difficulty. And if you keep working at it with an understanding that whatever you work on can be resolved, you would find that you always resolve whatever you work on. However, if you work on these things with a mentality and understanding that you are simply doing your best and your best is not enough to solve the problem, you would eventually realize that what you have called your best simply cannot solve that problem. So it's an identity thing first. All right, so number two, the problem of beginnings. Many people find it hard to start something because they believe that starting big is a necessity. And I believe in thinking big. However, starting is something that requires activation energy. And if we decide that, we're going to do it in such a way that it becomes problematic for us to carry out even one step, we would find ourselves procrastinating the things we want to do into the future. For example, you want to start a business. You can currently sell easily to about 5 people, but you want to start with 100. And so you start making plans, and you are not doing anything. And planning about the thing is not doing the thing. Writing about it is not doing it. Wishing about it is not doing it. The only way you can actually do something is to begin doing it. And you would find out that once you start doing, you get more energy because whatever you do over and over, you get better at. And human beings simply love doing whatever they are good at. That's why it's important to start and to start winning. So even if you only have 5 customers, make sure you sell to them to the best of your capacity such that they give you compliments. And even if they don't give you compliments, you work to do better next time. This is something that we should internalize because whenever we can start and start winning, we find out that we keep on winning. I've noticed it in the university environment because I'm currently a student at the University of Ibadan. So I see a lot of students having difficulty with their studies, not because they were not previously top scorers wherever they came from, but because they failed initially. And we can talk about that in a different case, how to rise back up after failing. But the thing to understand is that if we don't start winning, we are reducing the probabilities that we are ever going to start because the more time goes, the harder it is for us to even pick up the pace. The reason why it's so important for us to start is that human beings love momentum. I love momentum. I like working on something that is already moving. And even if you've noticed it in your life, you'll see that whenever you've already started something, it's easier to find somebody to help you out with that thing. It's easier to get resources for that. And once it has started, resources come to a place that is already working, right? It's the same thing for your personal lives. You are only ever going to find answers to your study issue when you are constantly studying. You are only ever going to find answers to your business problem when you are constantly in motion as it regards your business. You are only ever going to find answers to anything that concerns you whenever you are in motion as it relates to that particular part of your life. There is no manipulation involved. There is nothing else that you can do besides being in motion. That's why you have to start. Because once you get going, the resources, the materials, the knowledge, the insights, the people that you need gravitate towards you. It's simply like that. Even you yourself would not want to invest in a company that wasn't started yet. It's as simple as that. And for the final part, pacing. If you noticed earlier, I said that humans love momentum. And there's a reason why we love momentum. It's because only when it is in motion that further motion can be added to it. It takes force to start moving. It takes even less force to accelerate that body that is already in motion. So the car is an analogy for whatever project we want to start. And once we can get the car moving, it means that we've already started on the project. However, our goal is not just to get the car moving, but to keep on speeding it up infinitely. We want to go fast and faster and faster and faster, right? And the force that is used to bring about this acceleration of the car can be likened to what consistency does to whatever we do. Any man that can be consistent at anything will find himself doing that thing more and more efficiently and regularly, right? So there's something called a learning curve, right? And if we always have to keep learning something after every other week, whenever we feel like it, we're not going to be learning that thing, right? So there's something called a learning curve. And if we realize that we always have to be doing something every other week, whenever we feel like it, we are not going to learn that thing as efficiently as we should. However, if we were to always be learning that same once every week at a specific time, we would find out that we are always improving upon that single thing, because whenever we practice that thing at that given time, our brain works on it. And it's not that our brain is not working on it when we practice irregularly. It's that our brains like things to be easy. Remember, that's how we started. Simple things are simple but not easy to do. However, your brain likes things to be easy. And sometimes the things that make it easy for your brain to handle, the things that are actually hard to do. I remember back when I wanted to start reading. I wanted to start reading seriously. I had never really liked reading books that were not related to my academics, but I had realized that I needed to build certain skills as it concerns my life and character development. But I never really liked reading anything that wasn't strictly connected to academics. This was a problem, and I needed to fix it. So I decided that I was going to read for 15 minutes every day. So regardless of what I was doing, I was going to make sure that I read for 15 minutes every day. Now, that is something small. However, it's something relatively easy to do. I didn't decide that I was going to finish 2 books in a year. I didn't decide I was going to finish 25 books in a year. I just decided that I was going to read for 15 minutes every day. In fact, I even decided that I was allowed to not read for 2 days every week. So basically, I was going to be reading for 5 days every week. And I could take a 2-day break whenever I want. And I realized that as I started to read for 15 minutes every day, some days I would read for 9 minutes, some days I would read for 10, some days only 5. But I made sure I was reading every single day. At some point, I realized that I started reading for 18 minutes. At some other points, I was reading 30. At some other points, I started reading 1 hour. This is how you can build momentum. And this is coming from a person that has always struggled to read anything that wasn't related to a grade point average. In summary, the things it takes for you to be an extraordinary person don't have to be things that are complicated. The simple things that you already know can make you great if only you decided to do them regularly. What it takes to do them regularly is where hard work lies. And I explained that in order for you to make yourself into the kind of person that enjoys doing this work, that makes you into that greater person, you need to understand who you are and associate your identity with only productive words and productive things. You also need to understand that you need to start as quickly as you possibly can. You should always be thinking, do it now. Now. How can I do it now? How can I do it now? That is what you should always be thinking. You shouldn't be thinking, what do I need to start up? And rather, you should be thinking, what do I need to start now? And if what you need to start now is smaller than you initially expected, or rather, if what you have and in order to start now is smaller than you expected, start anyway and consciously work towards building. Then you also need to set an appropriate pace for yourself. because in consistency lies the power. And if you are not putting in that consistent work, you are just going to allow whatever you are building deteriorate. And make no mistake, whatever any person is building is also deteriorating at a certain rate. You simply have to be building faster than it deteriorates, because there is always entropy, there is always disorder, there is always chaos. So once you can be consistent enough to rise above the disorder, you start growing. That's simply what it is. If not, every single person that tried to build anything will build something big. But because of the disorder and chaos, unless you are consistent, unless you are proactive, you will never build anything big. You would never achieve anything great. So thank you for listening. If you want to learn more about how to make decisions in a simple framework, please like the video and subscribe. I'll be releasing that video by Saturday this week. Thank you very much.